Welcome to another episode of the Business Speed Podcast. I'm Steve Breitenstein here with Nick Bratton. This episode, we're super fortunate to have Coach Tyler Ray on. If you're not familiar with Tyler Ray, he is one of the world's best strength coaches, but in a specific side of jump training. That's where he's made his niche. But as we all know, if we're a good coach, we pretty much have to know about every aspect of athletic development. You can't just be a jump guy. Nick and I just can't be speed guys. He touches it all. But he has built a phenomenal platform on social media, online coaching, fantastic products that he's developed. He's been in and out of spaces, consulting with teams. So he's done a little bit of it all. And for this episode, we want to really dig deep into that business piece and some of the decisions and moments along the way that may have shaped where he is now, that maybe in the moment didn't seem very clear, but now looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that one was a good choice I made. But with further ado, Tyler, thank you so much for being on today.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Glad we could finally make this happen. And I'm always happy to chop it up with some passionate coaches, no matter what the topic. So boys, let's dive into it.
Yeah, I love it. So Tyler, I know a little bit on your background, if you want to share, just kind of, you were moving from the athlete side into the coaching side. If you can give just a little recap of kind of how that happened for context as we kind of move forward with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be my 20th year in the athletic performance space. Kind of rolled right into it straight out of university, competed as a national level track and field athlete for the University of Windsor, four-time national champs. Big shout out to my team. That was the dynasty. That 4 years was just everything. So I'm a track guy at heart. Jumping's been a part of my life since I can remember. Was obsessed with it since I was a kid. It's funny how I landed into this and ended up making a career out of it, because people for the longest time would shake their heads and just watch me do my thing. But rolled into the world of professional dunking. I started traveling the world for about 8 years or so, competing all over the globe in contests and shows as an athlete, and really started to develop a unique understanding and feel for jumping that I tried to bring into the coaching world as I transitioned into this kind of social media space that really helped my message start to blow up and spread all over. So I'm probably better known for pioneering a framework of vertical jump technique that is now used globally by thousands of people, which I'm super excited about. You know, if all said and done, as long as I could spread some educational messages around there, like I feel like everything's worthwhile. So I've landed here now, and I'm kind of tucked out in the corner here by Lake Erie in Ontario, Canada, and more of a kind of specialty coach now, like that has people into my gym and travels around the world on kind of contract training, and does a lot of the kind of the gravy to go on all that hard work that a lot of the strength coaches now are putting in on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's as brief as I can keep it. And yeah.
So when you started getting into that piece of now you're being asked to coach, this is always that hard spot as a young coach, as far as like the direction that you're going, where there's those kind of typical paths. Is you're going to go into the college side, where you're going to work with college strength and conditioning. You're going to become kind of a personal trainer, or you're going to be moving into, let's say, the professional side maybe, or the high school. And we know, like 20 years ago, the high school wasn't quite as big of a market to just kind of jump in and be a strength coach. What kind of set that motion as far as going from being a professional dunker to really coaching athletes?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been plugged into the coaching and educational side of things. I'm by trade, I was actually became a teacher first, and trained kind of in partnership with being a teacher. And then I made that shift after, I realized that I have a bigger passion for kind of combining the education with the athletic side of things. So the transition seemed fairly seamless, and it made a lot of sense because I'd been kind of creating content as an athlete on the early, days of YouTube, putting those drills and things out there that people would ask me, like, how do you jump so high? What are some of the things you're doing? And at that time, I was finishing up my degree. I was really starting to dive into like what the strength and conditioning side of things look like. I got personally as an athlete into strength training a little bit later than most would think. Like I kind of came out of high school directly into university, having really never lifted weights. I was more of a natural athlete in the sense where I was fairly quick. I could jump decently high, but it wasn't until I found the weight room, performance training, progressive strength training, and vertical jump technique that I was able to kind of take that to another level. But that transition seemed pretty seamless. And for me, it made a lot of sense because I had been dabbling in that kind of digital space already, coaching people remotely. And yeah, people started asking me around here, can you work with me? And it was just a matter of time before, obviously, I had the right athletes in front of me at the right time.
When you were starting to work remotely, that's pretty early on then. How did that kind of start happening? Was that people reaching out through email, through comments on your YouTubes? Like this was a little bit before maybe Instagram was as popular with how many kind of people will DM you and just be able to interact really closely. How did that kind of get going for you? And did you find that you were developing a community around the YouTube that was maybe like a certain niche, or was it a lot of people that were getting in front of it?
Yeah, I mean, these were in the early days of YouTube. I'm talking probably 2006 through 2008, when it had just kind of, started being something that people utilized as a form of entertainment. So I had just been posting like my dunk videos, clips from shows and things like that. And I developed a bit of a following that were interested in my journey. We're talking, 2,000-3,000 people that were subscribed at the time. And at that time, like 2,000 or 3,000 people on YouTube was like I felt good about it. It was a pretty big deal. Not a lot of these massive channels that exist now, but the comments that I would get, about how to jump higher didn't result in so much the remote training as much as when I started training people locally. I did it for free. I recorded everything and started uploading some of those early sessions on YouTube, giving the people that kind of behind the scenes look. That's when I started getting these inquiries about like, do you have a jump program? Do you have something that I can consume? And I had made kind of like a basic PDF program that people could kind of follow along. And it's from people doing that kind of first wave of program that email remote coaching kind of became the initial platform for my online business. Yeah.
I love that. And Nick, I know that we have talked about before some of the ideas for just when you're starting to develop those programs, how deep does it need to go? And I was curious, like Nick, you have had some of those kind of speed, like surface level kind of ebook ideas and application of just offering it. Kind of give Nick or give Tyler just a little insight into kind of like what you have done and kind of like that similar situation with him. Like how deep do you guys want to go on that?
Yeah, for me, what we do from kind of a speed standpoint is, and this is one of the questions that I had for Tyler, but you're meeting people at such different points. You have some individuals that they're just getting into it. They're starting to learn some of the basics. They're trying to just get a taste for what's going on. And then you have individuals who, they're trying to squeeze the last ounce out of that orange and trying to get every little bit out of themselves that they're able to get to. And so, when you either back in the day or even now, when you're working with individuals for the first time, how do you really assess, especially not being with them in person, how do you really assess where they're at, what they're capable of, and kind of where you start them on those progressions?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I probably serve a little bit more of the general population in the sense of I provide programs that are kind of infinitely scalable, to a degree where I'm giving, my method is keep it very, very simple and allow people to scale within the context of that simplicity. And I think that's how I've been more successful, is that's kind of always been the leading edge of my message, right? Which is, individual training is great. When I have people in the gym, I mean, we're highly specified and we're definitely putting elements into their training that benefit them specifically from the person standing next to them. But when it comes to online, like you're saying, it's very difficult to account for the multitudes of differences between athletes where they lie physically, how they move physically. So it's really a matter of just unfortunately trying to almost hit them with a bit of a shotgun approach, try to get a lot of those points covered, because the mass majority of people in the, that are trying to increase their vertical jump really need just some general progressive strength training. Anything for them is going to help them jump higher at this point, because they're really not doing much as it stands. We're talking about the general beginner or untrained individual. Somebody that's been doing it for a while, within that same program, all we have to do is progress loading. We can kind of progress variation of the same movement. And then as they're more advanced, they're probably not going to be in that specific program. They're likely going to be either working with somebody locally, or they're going to be a one-on-one, high value remote client, in which case I would sit down with them and kind of run through that initial pre-screening and really find out, specifically where their bottlenecks are in terms of training, and then program according to that. So to answer your question in a broad brushstroke, I try to keep it simple and allow people to scale within the parameters of a program, and just make sure that I, communicate that as clearly as I can within the confines of that program.
Yeah. I know one of the things that Steve and I talk about regularly, I also talk about it with our staff and interns, is, just being able to highlight on an athlete, what some of their strengths and weaknesses are, but specifically, are they more of like a neural type athlete, longer tendons, a little more reactive, or are they more of a strength-based athlete? They're building a lot of their force production out of what they do in the weight room. When you're, working with some of your more advanced individuals, do you get to a point where you feel like you're kind of keying in on the strengths of that individual to continue to, build the vertical, build their characteristics? Or is it something where you're continuing to have more of a balanced approach where we're hitting a little bit of everything throughout training?
It's a great question, and something that I try to speak on as much as I can on my channel. How athletes exist along that spectrum of elasticity to kind of contractile dominance. To answer your question, as they get more advanced, I think we're going to slightly bias some of their kind of natural power outlet tendencies. So if they are more neural, then they need to have that stimulus involved more frequently, but there's still going to be a degree of balanced training in there. We just play around at that point with the loading and frequency of those movements specifically, right? So if someone is highly neural, we know that if we overload them with weights, that we kind of suppress their ability to be able to express their power and speed at the highest level, but we still want them moving through healthy ranges of motion. We just don't necessarily want to tax them with the same amount of static load, right? Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, we're going to narrow in. We're going to definitely dive into what gets them or makes them tick, but keep it balanced in the sense of we still want to have that athlete at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with 3 track guys on this podcast, I would be remiss if we did not talk about speed at all. But Steve and I talk about it all the time. Our approach to speed, its application to everything that we're doing. You're obviously known for your ability to build a vertical for your jumps. And so, without predicating anything here, what is sprinting and speeds? How does it exist in your programming and in your training?
To be perfectly honest, so like right now, number one, I don't have any track athletes in my kind of private facility. I am 95% high performance girls volleyball players right now. Mm-hmm. Volleyball is a massive part of my audience. So I train specifically volleyball players. That being said, I have worked with track athletes in the past, and sprinting as a part of training definitely exists. Now in my facility, we can't sprint here. It's just not large enough. Mm-hmm. But they're supplemented. Like as we get them, it depends on obviously where we are in the season, but as we're getting them to, let's say, needing to go to a provincial or national level combine, they're getting in front of some coaches, they got to be able to jump their highest. Well, I don't care who you are, the benefits of that speed and sprint output will be there for you. So they're going to get a dose of sprinting once a week, probably leading up 4 or 5 weeks out to that combine, just to kind of get that nervous system nice and sensitive and responsive. How it looks, it's going to largely depend on that athlete's history of sprinting and specifically what they can tolerate. So it might just be some kind of, flying 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. They might be doing, repeats of a little bit longer duration if their endurance could use some help with that as well. But for the most part, like within the confines of my gym, we don't do a lot of high output sprinting in here. Mm-hmm. But I definitely see the benefits and try to get that in front of as many athletes as they need it leading up to something really, really important.
You're referencing your gym, which is, mm-hmm. It's currently out of your house, right?
Yeah, one sec. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah. So if you're just listening, he's just panning the video to just over his shoulder, and there's his court with all of his jumping training. And now, when you were kind of in this place early, when you were just talking about YouTube and you were starting to write programs for people, they were emailing for you, I imagine there was this moment where the idea was, well, should I be training people in person? Should I be involved in a facility, either trying to own it, renting space out of a space, or just staying as a virtual coach? What was that process like for you at that moment in coaching? Because we've all been through that, and we all go through like evolutions of maybe I need to get out of this and move into that. So what was that like for you in that moment?
I've been all over the place, guys. I mean, starting 20 years ago, I was primarily neutral location when I first started. So I'd meet people in parks and kind of common spaces and bring my own, resistance bands and a couple kettlebells and rusty dumbbells and really just hopefully have people let me train them. When you're early and young, before the days of Instagram where you could have a following, I mean, it was a proving ground. You had to get out there and do the work and make sure that people benefited from your training so that they'd talk about you, and then eventually hopefully somebody would want to pay you for it. So I put my dues in with that. I transitioned into more of a commercial gym setting for a while, where I worked as a kind of a traditional personal trainer, where I just had a little bit of a different type of demographic, right? People sought me out that were looking to be a little bit more athletic. I had a lot of general population that I trained actually early on that I think informed a lot of my methods and my ability to troubleshoot a great deal now as a 20-year veteran of the space. I needed those early days of those kind of general population clients, elderly population clients, to be able to really understand the human body across the spectrum. So I'm really thankful for that. Moved from commercial space into more of a performance training center, where it was, again, really the whole space was kind of designed to be for athletes. So it had a very kind of small artificial ice area for athletes to be able to go in and skate. It had a turf area. It had a little, like, couple of lanes of track that you could sprint on. It had a weight room area. So it was nice and spread out. And I liked that for a while, but I started to realize pretty early on that I march to the beat of my own drum quite a bit better than I do to someone else's. So I knew that I had to be doing something for myself. And that's kind of when I decided that I would kind of branch out and just become a sole proprietor at the time and be my own personal trainer at that time. And I kind of went back to the neutral location training, gymnasiums, and I would host like weekend, workouts where it's like a $5 drop-in type of deal. I mean, I went through all the different frameworks of how to put a business together early on, trying to find out what worked for me. This whole time, still having this kind of footprint online that I would, nurture to a degree, but give as much at the time as I knew how, and then still try to grow the in-person stuff. The performance training then led to being involved with we'll call it like a small box gym, more of like a CrossFit-y style space where it was a little bit more, quote unquote, functional training. But that became the space that I lived out of for a while. And it was really about trying to find out how I served the athletic population the best. Early on, I didn't know that I was going to be a jump, specific coach. I was trying to be a strength and conditioning coach. That was my goal, right? That's a huge sea to swim in. There's a lot of strength and conditioning coaches. I mean, I was growing up on the heels of, Eric Cressy and these guys who had just done such a wonderful job kind of pioneering this high-end performance in the public eye type of feel. Mm-hmm. And I knew I wanted to do something like that. I loved educating to a big audience. I'm very comfortable on camera. I liked video editing. I was also coaching. So it all kind of, made a lot of sense to me behind the scenes. And then from this kind of big box gym, I met my now wife and moved in with her. And she had this 350 square foot detached garage that I stripped down and turned into a little gym. The walls were like particle board that I had them graffitied, and half the stuff was homemade, lifting platforms and split squat stands and all these different things. And I grew my social media, started my social media presence there out of that gym with YouTube and Instagram. Instagram really wasn't a thing for me until about 2015. I had a small following on there that had followed me over from YouTube. I was posting at what the time seemed like, what I should be posting, which was, videos of my athletes squatting and doing lifts like everybody else was. And, they were doing all right. I had about 1,500 followers and, they get 500 to 1,000 views on a video, which is cool. And I thought I was doing the right thing. And one day I just took a chance and I said, well, I've been coaching jump technique for so long. I might as well just put something up about it and let people know what it is that I do. Right. Mm. So I put up this side profile video of one of my athletes, one of my female volleyball players, touching 10 feet for the first time, which was like a huge thing. Her jump was a beautiful jump that I kind of wrote a synopsis of in the caption below, using the nomenclature that I'd come to know and speak about jumping on. And that post did 500,000 views in less than a week. And it blew my mind. I was like, what? Like, where did this come from? You know, the comments, where did you learn this? What are you talking about in these captions? This is amazing. I want to know more. Like, they just wanted more information. So I thought I'd put more up, and lo and behold, people were interested in learning about jump technique and specifically, you know, why it was working for me. And then the wave started, and I got on my surfboard and I never got off that wave. I really, like, I tell this to people all the time when they go like, how do I build a business like you and build a brand? And I say, you just try, and then keep trying, and then try again, and then try more. And then when it doesn't work, keep trying. And eventually maybe a wave will start. And you might not recognize it, but you better have that surfboard in hand, because it's time to get going when it starts to go. So that's where it's ended up now. My following has grown a great deal across multiple platforms since about 2015. And now I'm here with you boys, just chopping it up, having a great time. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, you know, so that's kind of where I wanted to go next with you was, you know, again, these are conversations that Steve and I have regularly, but you know, you have such a following now. And so when you ultimately have to have at least some type of thought on what you're doing with your social media and where you're going and how you're planning it. And so, you know, you have new people that are joining you every day. Do you ever think about, do I need to take this back to the basics a little bit and catch people up? Do I need to keep going with what I'm working on right now? How do you think about content creation and the information that you're putting out, and how people are able to follow along with you and make sure that, you know, they're staying up with how you're going about this?
That's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, I've never been asked that before, and I don't know why, but I have an answer for you.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping that there's a little bit of gold in this answer. For me right now, I've had a distinct vision for where I want, specifically my personal coaching channel. So I do have 2 Instagram channels right now. One of them I don't currently do the content creation for. I have an ex-athlete of mine doing. That's our brand channel, Project Pure Athlete. So that one I ran by myself for the longest time. Got to a point where I had to pass it on, and then I started growing my personal coaching page that's now doing really well. And I love growing my personal page because it's almost feels like a brand new audience. Mm-hmm. Do I feel like I need to go back to the basics? No, because I feel like there's continuity through all of the posts, in the sense that no matter what area of the jump I'm touching on, whether it's in the form of technique or training, I provide context within the captions that there is more to this than meets the eye with a 30 to 60 second video, right? I think that's the biggest difficulty for content creators that are coaches and educators, is it doesn't feel like enough time to get across a message in 90 seconds in a reel. But posting a 90-second reel almost never keeps people's attention, right? It's very difficult. My best performing, we'll call them 90-second reels, which are my jump analysis posts that go into great detail. I'll find a really great example and I'll provide context and a drill of a 90-second video. The average watch time on any of those videos is anywhere between 30 and 40 seconds. Okay. So that's a long watch time for a minute 30 video, right? What I'm hoping is that the ones that get all the way to the end, they're in my net. They're well within my channel now. And that's where I'm able to provide them kind of insight into why they should subscribe to my channel as well. So I have a subscription base to that channel where I put exclusive content, where now it's a little bit more of like organic coaching material. I'm just on the microphone coaching, and I can provide a greater degree of context to my posts. And I try to bring people in that fashion, right? Cast a large net, try to give something useful, bring people in that first layer, provide something a little bit more detailed, and you're just sifting that lead down to where you want them, which is to be really a part of that, your infrastructure of your brand as an active, monetizable, right, athlete or coach, because that's what they're looking for as well. I think there's this misnomer that you should never try to sell your audience or monetize your audience, but we're looking to be sold. in some way or another. We're looking to be sold with the right message. So I think people that are afraid to sell their audience are ones that still have not figured out what their message is and what they're trying to deliver in a very clear way. And that's kind of how I view it. I'm trying to bring people in with reels that are different, with content that is different. And that's largely because I'm speaking on a topic that I pioneered. So thankfully, I'm a bit of the voice in that space. And when I say something about jumping and technique, people usually listen. So it's been a fun ride to figure out how to get people into that orbit. And once they're in there, I do kind of free form post a little bit. If I find something that I think will benefit my audience, I deliver it to them, but then provide the context within the caption of where this falls within kind of that lineage of progression, right? From beginner through to advanced.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. I have a tendency to tangent myself at times, but
touched on a lot of spaces around it, which I thought was fantastic for sure.
Yeah,
And
my brain doesn't let me just necessarily stay on that line. I get maybe ADHD. Who knows what it is, guys? We're trying our best over here.
That's how you're able to be successful, is the ADHD. That keeps you going.
Probably.
When you get focused, you get hyper focused.
Yeah,
I will say I subscribed to Tyler's channel recently when it kind of came up, just because exactly what you're talking about. I've enjoyed the content coming from a while, and I always feel like I want to show appreciation for that too, to say like, hey, I know you've put in work behind this. This is not haphazard. There's a lot of intentionality around here. And I wanted to experience just like what is going on behind the scenes as far as some of this personal coaching you're able to offer us behind the scenes. And for a few dollars a month, it's like, yeah, this is interesting to kind of see the thought process behind some of these coaching things, not just the edited clips. And that was going to be my question a little bit, was how have you seen your evolution of the editing of your content go? Because early on, when we first start posting, oftentimes it's just raw. Yeah. And then you go to highly edited and they perform horribly. And you're like, all right, well, I got to do something in the middle, because this post took me a week and a half and it got 1,000 views. And this post I did nothing with and it got me 20,000 views. I'm not sure what to do now. Yeah. Where has that changed for you along the way? I know you said you enjoyed editing, so I was curious how that evolution happened.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on editing are probably threefold. Like, number one, I love storytelling. I like editing. For me is a creative outlet, and I think some of my favorite pieces of content to make are ones that try to tell a story in a very short period of time, whether it's highlighting an athlete or the progress of someone over time. Like that's a fun piece of content to make, and they typically perform really well, right? People like stories, people like people. So if you're a people forward channel, you typically will do well highlighting how your individuals are doing, as long as you're telling that story in a way that keeps people engaged, right? So clips always perform better when they are shorter, meaning that you're giving them a snapshot of what's going on. But if you leave a single video clip, even if it's moving, up for any more than 3 to 4 seconds on the screen, unless there is something very dynamic going on, you lost them. Like, they're gone. And I think that the stat is 2 seconds. You have about 2 seconds to gain someone's attention. So that's where the ability to create a good hook on your content becomes very, very important. What are you offering them? In 2 seconds, can I tell you exactly what this is and what you'll get from it, right? And make it exciting, quote unquote, clickbaity enough that people are going to be there, but you're not lying, right? There's got to be this balance, because you could go super clickbaity and be like, do this one drill and you'll jump 3 feet higher, right? You could just be, it's guaranteed to this, but that's cringe. And that typically doesn't foster trust or belief, right? People want to be on board with something that they trust. Or you go the other way and you get too technical. As coaches and trainers, I think we overestimate how many people care about what we do. You know what I mean? We love what we do, and we love chopping it up with each other and other professionals. Some athletes enjoy the intricacies, the science behind training, but most people just want to know what it's in it for them. That, right? Try to understand people and how we work. So that's what's been really helpful for me with growing this channel, is I'm going to deliver, on one hand, the analysis posts are probably the one end of the spectrum. So it's longer form. They're highly detailed. They use a language that people need to learn, but they keep people engaged because I animate through my coaching app to be able to keep people focused in on what I want them to see. And then I typically will provide some sort of contextualized drill or exercise to follow that in order to give something that they can take home that's tangible for them. Mm-hmm. The other end of the spectrum are going to be the shorter, we'll call them storytelling posts. Maybe it's a before and after, right? What are the differences in these things? And you're getting people to participate. You want them to engage with what you have and participate. But this is, again, all predicated on how engaged your audience is. So a lot of this stuff lives within the orbit of how well do you nurture your social media platform? Do you go on it often, right? Because at the end of the day, social media rewards usage. It rewards engagement of you on other people's channels. It rewards you using the functions they provide. So that's why you're saying, if you spend all this time making this like high-end edit and you put this highly produced video on Instagram, well, Instagram algorithm, it recognizes the post. You made a post, the action is posting, but none of what's in the video was any of the plugins or softwares that Instagram uses from their editing side of things. So it's not really you're missing something. So if you're going to edit something in an external editing app, make sure you leave room for when you upload it to be able to add titling and a hook and things from Instagram to be able to layer on some of the functionalities. So that's been quite helpful as well. So, and then, yeah, to answer your question, I think I did, again, in multiple different ways. But again, I like to provide context to the way I answer things so that there's hopefully no additional questions necessary.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard. I mean, for coaches that are not in the hundreds of thousands of followers, and you're somewhere in that space of you're more than just started out, but you're in that space of like, should I push to grow this, or should I just kind of chill where it's at because I'm doing good business? I think it's helpful to kind of get a little bit of an insight about what is actually successful in this space, because you see a lot about how many times a day you're posting, what should it say, what should it be, and sometimes it feels inauthentic to who you are as a coach.
Correct.
And it's always like this push and pull of like, all right, well, I have to post today, or it says I need to, but I don't want to. But I think there's a difference, as you're just kind of describing, when you enjoy the process of it, you enjoy the interaction and the community you're creating. I think that makes it a little bit more of a fun part of the experience as a coach.
Yeah. At the end of the day, guys, you have to, you don't need social media to be successful. But if you want to be successful on social media, you need social media. So that's at the end of the day, yet what the question you have to ask yourself is it worth the time for me? If you run a brick and mortar and you've got a full gym and athletes are in there, then your social media can be secondary as a priority. It can serve, as a bulletin board, like a lot of people do, where they just put graphics up and say, oh, open gym there and this. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Now, in my mind, as a business owner, even if I have a brick and mortar, I'm just looking at Instagram as free marketing and advertising and a platform for further monetization. So it's got to involve an individual who sees and understands the benefit of using it and using it well. And then, do you have the time to commit to it? Number one, do you want to commit to it? Number two, and if you don't, then putting someone in charge of that for you could very well be worth the investment on a month-to-month basis. That's why I started, my wife started a business and brought me on board for social media management. Is there are people out there that don't want to do it themselves. And we just happen to understand the climate of social media, and we take that off their hands. And it's quite beneficial for a lot of people. Got to ask yourself those questions, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tyler, I want to elevate to a 30,000 foot view here. So you've talked about a few of the things that you use, started out on YouTube, now with everything that you're doing on Instagram. You talked about the subscriptions on Instagram. First, can you give us just a little bit of an idea of everything that you have going on? You talked about the coaching you do in person, the coaching that you do online. So you've talked about some of those things, but what are all the entities that you basically are
plugged in right now? Okay. So, founded and co-owned Project Pure Athlete, which is kind of the first established brand that I built, which is 360-degree approach to training. And that's kind of where I developed the vertical jump technique procedures under that. So it's the Project Pure Athlete. We have a coaching certification. So I have over 150 certified coaches globally at this point that teach our vertical jump technique methods. So there's the Project Pure Athlete, the strength and conditioning business. There is the educational side of things. So the Project Pure Athlete level 1 and level 2 coaching certifications. There's my own personal, we'll call it coaching brand within that, which is kind of what we've been speaking about. Which is more just the social media demand, the Instagram and TikTok and YouTube behind that. There are some digital programs available online. There are some remote training services available online. I have a couple private remote athletes. I have 12 in-person athletes that I see weekly here in the lab at my gym. I get contracted in travel, which I'm doing next week. I'm going to Saskatchewan to work with a college girls volleyball team to work on a vertical jump overhaul experience, which is a 3-day experience where we kind of strip them down in terms of their mechanics and behaviors, and we try to build them up over a 3-day period of time. I'm also pairing that with an in-person certification with their coach, so they're going to kind of shadow me the entire time. What else we got going on here? I run a business with my wife, Ascension Socials, which is social media management. I also do higher end video edits for some of those clients, so real estate and some of the other industries that we work with. And I do a little bit more kind of video editing. I go in and shoot video for them, fly the drone up, do the old kit and caboodle, and then make something pretty at the end. And then most importantly, I'm a dad and a husband. So there's a few hats that I wear.
Sure.
But I love it. And I used to have a podcast, but I guys, I don't have time for it anymore. I just don't.
Right. So that's great context for where I actually want to go with this.
Okay.
So Steve knows this. My passion, what I love is vision and casting vision, having an understanding for where I'm going with things. And so you have a lot going on. And all of these things are growing and growing and growing. And so, sooner or later, either you bring individuals on that help you to manage and handle and continue to grow those things. And then there are also times where you have to decide, okay, is this something that I want to hold on to? Almost like you just talked about with social media and gyms deciding how they're going to use that. So for you, obviously, you've had to put a lot of thought into how you are going to continue to grow and evolve with this. And so where do you think this goes 3 to 5 years from now? Where are you really focusing, and what is your kind of intent with the continued growth of this?
Yeah, it's a big one to unpack, but to kind of try to wrap it up neatly. So my wife and I with Ascension Socials and the social media management company, like I've got a lot of bandwidth involved with that right now because I'm trying to help her get to a point where she has support staff to be able to manage some of the things that she needs taken off her plate. But I'm doing anywhere between 12 and 20 pieces of content for her a week right now as an editor. So that's a big chunk of my time. I love the strategy behind building something in an industry that I'm kind of newer to, but have a lot of experience on the platform. So it's kind of fun to learn that new industry. The coaching side of things, I keep things pretty small and intimate now in terms of the amount of hours that I coach personally, but I do need to coach a little bit weekly to be able to kind of keep my coaching itch scratched. And so I do that with, coaching how many hours right now? About 8 hours, 12 athletes. And that's kind of nice. It provides a lot of that relief for that side of things. Where it's going to go in 3 to 5 years, I imagine what's going to happen is I will, again, continue to put a lot into the social media management side of things and my own remote footprint online. So providing things that can function a little bit for me without my time being needed. So more programs and certifications and subscriptions, monetizing in that fashion. And then I will just, again, keep my feet wet with coaching and these kind of one-off travel coaching gigs whenever they fit in. So I imagine it'll look similar, but potentially by that point, some of the other businesses have scaled and grown and have the support within them to be able to hold them together without me needing to stretch myself too thin. Because that's really at the end of the day, what the issue can become is burnout. And I've experienced it before a couple different times where, I've had this immense drive and discipline to stay on top of, let's talk, social media, for example, just posting daily or 5 days a week. I've posted minimum 5 days a week for the last 8 years straight. So this isn't an overnight thing where people go, it must be nice to have hundreds of thousands of followers. It's like, yeah, but it didn't just fall in my lap. Like I've earned them all through putting this work in and sat there and watched followers go down and watch things not work. So it does take time, but yeah, if I had to flash forward, and my vision is really just keep riding this wave, and troubleshooting as I go to make sure that I'm not sacrificing, which to me is the most important thing, which is how the quality of level of care I can provide for my family as a father and a husband. Because really, like, why are we doing any of it at the end of the day if it's not just to be able to live with our families and enjoy that time? I'm trying to really, I'm in a bit of a growth portion of my own life right now, where I'm starting to see the whole picture a bit differently. It's not so much about like bigger, better, more money, this, like, it's not about that anymore, but I'm focused more on satisfying like the passion that I have for this. And as a result, the bigger, more money things are happening because I'm not focused on it. I'm just aware of it. And I think that positioning my mindset has been a very helpful thing with allowing me to take that next step up. So that's going to be what I want to continue year on year, is just staying grounded, continue to do what I love, and remember that I love to teach, right? And if I can kind of stay rooted in that, then the rest of it it'll fall where it falls.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's excellent. And kind of leads to what Steve and I end up wrapping up each episode with is the leadership portion of this, how we lead ourselves, lead our teams. I've got a staff that is here in the facility with me. Steve has a staff that he leads. But ultimately, if we're not, leading at home and taking care of home, then, nothing else matters. So it's great to hear that, even from somebody with hundreds of thousands of viewers.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like, that's the only reason I have the viewers and the audience, is that I've had a support from my family. They've provided me with an environment that allows me to be creative and take chances and follow my passion. So I owe it to them. I owe it to myself, and I want it for them and myself. So it's not a difficult task to be able to wrap it up at the end of the day and play The Floor is Lava with my 4-year-old. And, my gym here at my house is awesome in the sense that it's like great for training athletes, but it's also an amazing space for him to be able to grow up in, move around, learn things, and just have fun. Because, he sure has a lot of fun.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. And Tyler, to wrap up, where can people find you the easiest? And what's your preferred way for them to reach out? Because you're on everything. If they're looking to contact you, give yourself a little bit of plug here.
Yeah. So follow me on Instagram. It's @JumpGuyTy. That's probably the easiest way to figure out what I'm doing on a weekly basis. You can follow the brand page, which is @Project Pure Athlete. I'm on TikTok at Jump Guy Tyler. They didn't have Jump Guy Ty available. Apparently there's another Jump Guy Ty out there. I don't know who that is, but Jump Guy Tyler. And those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Throw me a DM in one of those. Do my best to get back and personally respond to each and every single one, predominantly by voice message. I love to be able to make that contact so people can hear my voice and realize that I'm just a guy that's teaching people how to jump.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Anytime, guys. I had a blast. Thank you.